what we did is use a roller to establish a count for how far around this side was as opposed to the upper. And on the bottom, we actually took the time to punch through each of these holes to allow the needle to go in fairly easy, because this is pretty dense stuff. And then we use the roller again on the upper to actually just get a count. And here you see little marks every 2 and then every 10. So that I can then tell that there's 68 on the upper holes, well there's 73 on these holes. So the dichotomy here is what mostly I wanted to address. If we just stitch these things down, starting from a point, it would slowly move things over until finally the point on the top or on the back wouldn't get hit. Or somewhere around here, when you realized it was off, you would suddenly try and stretch the leather. What I found worked pretty good was establishing the 2/3 points by just taking whatever number you have, in this case 68, divided by 3, and then figuring out exactly where that mark is at a 1/3, 2/3 position. Do the same thing for both. Line these up, stitch them together. On this side, you can see the initial stitch, one at the point, one here, and one there. And then as I progress through, like this one here, I will just cut off once I need to have that room to maneuver. And this is allowing me to get a fairly well proportioned shoe. I'll throw on some video of the finished shoe upstairs for my left foot using the exact same method. But as you can see, I was out by quite a bit. 68 stitches on the top required, 73 on the bottom. So yeah, don't spin the camera around. That just makes people's heads twist off. So that difference can really add up. Here it's not so bad, 67, 64, that's what we usually see, maybe just 3 off. And this tells me whether I'm going to stretch the upper or if I'm going to squish the upper. And then all that happens is, because on this time around I'm only punching the holes in the sole. And then I go through and I go, hey, let's put a stitch to match this one. So you can see the little bit of needle popping up. So then we come around this side, and if I was trying to stretch this still, then what I would do is, instead of cutting the hole right here, I would just come back to about here and then wiggle that thing in. I don't want to, so I'm just going to show you the method here that I'm using for this. Get the hole tool in here though, because this is a modified punch, and all I'm having to do with this soft split leather is just wiggle it back and forth until it comes through. If you're pushing so hard that your hand hurts at the end of the day, that's too hard for this leather. Now you can see it come through. That's enough. At this point, I can now take the needle. Oh, I'm backwards. Let's fix that. Boop. There's the needle poking out so we can see it. There's the needle poking out so we can see it. So let me come in like that, find where the needle is. If this works while I have it on camera, goes on through. We can see it there. And this is a flesh stitch, so I'm getting a butted. So I guess in a way it's kind of not the classic turn shoe, which would have had a bigger seam on the inside. But, and I'm trying these larger needles. I don't think they're really required. You just have to have one big enough to get through here. But it is nice to find them with your hands sometimes. So when you pull the first one through, I find that really helps is just give a little tug and stop. Don't touch it, don't do anything else. Because with any luck at all, those holes will still be aligned, and we can just slide this right back on through and find everything. No, see, it's already moved a little bit. So we'll dig down. And the only reason that's important is sometimes a pace is nice to be able to establish. Oh yeah, see, I'm not on it, so I'll find it, find the hole, and up. Now this stitch is a little too close to the edge. I didn't like that one, but never fails when you do something on camera. And as you can see, my quality stitches, I'm all over the place. But since these stitches aren't going to show, I don't care. What I do care about is I'm not so close is that there's barely any strength in that stitch. But since this is a product that gets strength from the multiple stitches, as long as I don't torque on this thing too hard, it should survive. And then here, what I like to do is push the joint flush again, give it a little tug, hold it for a second, because really what we're trying to do is not just tighten this piece up, but the ones prior. And that's basically it. You just continue, repeat as necessary, flip to the other side, and then go about doing your inversion, which is basically push the toe in and right it up. I will say that I do suggest putting some extra stitches here, because I think it's the most extreme inversion that happens, and that it can gap the most. Plus, it's the part that everybody instantly sees. This spot and this part. But basically, that's it. They're really not hard to do. Pattern might be the hardest part. Everything else is just tedious. I think I got about another 80 stitches to go for both sides, and I'm done. That's it. So this is the end result. Although, to be perfectly honest, this was the right foot. Always try and get that part to close, but never guaranteed. And what we did is we soaked everything down for the inversion, and still drying it out, and then I wrapped it. Last time I did it with Saran wrap. I think that's a mistake, because you need it to be able to dry out. So I think mostly my foot absorbed most of the moisture. The second one time through, or halfway through this one, we started using a tensor bandage, because it can breathe and it can absorb liquids, which I don't care about. And yeah, I have dogs. But the profile came out looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that. I don't mind the wrinkles. It's actually conforming it to my foot so that it actually fits properly. And, you know, compared to this may not be as representative. It's not representative of the final product. So, yep, that's where we're going with this. Here, see? 2 right foots until I invert this one.